لا من يجمع المال ويلقى فيه أهوالا سنون العمر ماضية وكأس الموت قد سالا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Dear beloved viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I welcome you once again to this program, Trials of Wealth. In the previous program, we discussed about wealth distribution from an Islamic perspective, and I introduced one of the instruments that is used in Islam for distributing wealth. And we mentioned that when you acquire wealth as a Muslim, you still have responsibility of making sure that that wealth is transferred to the next generation, to other people in a Sharia compliant manner. These other people could be your relatives or could be other people that you care about. Now, Islam has its own instruments that guides us when it comes to transferring our wealth to other people. And one of such instruments that is going to be the discussion of today's program, insha'Allah ta'ala, is what is known as wasiyah, an Islamic will. What is an Islamic will? An Islamic will simply means a transfer of ownership, or a will, or an Islamic will simply means a transfer of ownership for no consideration to take effect after the death of the person who is giving that transfer. So you as an individual, you have certain properties or you have cash. Now you write down how this wealth will go or will pass to other people without you getting anything in return. But this will take effect, the moment that this transfer will happen is upon your death. So in this definition, there are two key elements here when it comes to wasiyah. Number one element is it must be executed during your lifetime. While you are still alive, you write up this statement, or it can also be made orally, provided there are witnesses as required by country's law, because when it comes to a will, you have to, especially in our countries, you have to ensure that the will complies with, number one, Sharia, Islamic law, and number two, country's law, so that it becomes enforceable. And this document is very important if you want to ensure that what you leave behind in terms of wealth or in terms of possessions passes to your intended beneficiary in a faster, smoother, and safe manner. If you ignore this, there are chances of the procedure to be very long if there is no will, or even some beneficiaries not to benefit and become a chaotic matter in the family. So we Muslim, our religion is always putting the interest of humanity at the uppermost level. So it teaches us that while we are alive, we should write something with regards to how we want our wealth to be taken care of while we are gone on this life. So number one, it is executed during the lifetime of the testator. This is the person who is making the will. And number two element, the second element, is a will takes effect after the death of the testator, the person who is giving it. It cannot be implemented or executed while you are alive. Now suppose you are asking yourself, what is the basis of an Islamic will? Where do we get this Islamic will in our religion? We will just quote one verse from the Quran and narrate one hadith to justify or to give as a proof that we have been instructed and told the need to have a will in this faith. In the Quran, in Surah An-Nisa, verse number 11, which talks about inheritance and who gets how much, etc. At the end or near to the end of the verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مِن بَعْدِ وَصِيَّةٍ يُوصِي بِهَا أَوْ دَيْنٍ. There are several verses that repeats this similar but not same, similar statement, that مِن بَعْدِ وَصِيَّةٍ يُوصَى بِهَا أَوْ دَيْنٍ. Allah says in that inheritance, distribution according to fara'id, according to the Islamic way of distributing wealth to the inheritors, should only come, should take effect after the wasiyah has been executed and the debt has been paid. So a Muslim, when he passes on, the ayah teaches us, before the inheritors starting getting their shares, first thing is to look at the wasiyah. What the deceased wanted, or what was the instruction he gave on how his wealth to be handled. So that's the first thing. The second thing, upon now, which we will talk a lot about wasiyah, but the second thing in the ayah mentioned is a debt. A debt has to be paid before children's or mothers or brothers or grandparents takes a share. So Sharia has prioritized that when a person dies, if there is wasiyah, that has to be executed first. And then there are debts have to be settled. And third, that is when now whoever is legally supposed to inherit that brother will now take his due share according to the provisions of Sharia. So this is one of the ayah that we find the word wasiyah is clearly mentioned. Now in the Sunnah, in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we learn that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, ما حق امرئ مسلم له شيء يوصى فيه يبيت ليلتين إلا ووصيته عنده مكتوبا. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in this authentic hadith, it is a duty of a Muslim who has something to be given as a bequest, not to spend 2 nights, in other hadith, not to spend 3 nights, without writing a will about it. Muslim scholars in this hadith have discussed whether it is mandatory to have a will or not. The consensus or the majority of the views of the scholars, the majority of the scholars are of the view that it is sunnatu mu'aqqada. It's not a wajib, but it is a highly recommended practice. It's a highly recommended teaching of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that we should not take it lightly. It is really closer to wajib, in other words. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is teaching us that if you have something, you have wealth, you have money, you have house, you have a land, you have a car, you have other things, possessions, other possessions, you should not sleep 2 nights without you having written a will. So these two hadith, the Quran and the hadith which I just mentioned, are some of the proofs that teaches us, or that lays the ground, as in Islam, Islamic will or wasiyah is something that we can practice and we can use in our life with regards to distribution of wealth. Now there is an important statement that has been said by scholars, that the wasiyah and the dain, which one takes precedent? Which one starts first? There are scenarios. The first scenario is a person doesn't have a will. If he doesn't have a will and his debtors are known, then debtors have to be paid. And if he has a will, but he hasn't articulated his debtors in that will, which is something that some of Muslims, when they write their wills, forgets to mention their debts. Now, if you have a will, but you didn't mention your debtors, but you just started saying that a thuluth of my mal, of my property, I want it to be distributed to so and so, they said, if you have a will, you have articulated, you have given a third of it to whatever charitable use or to a person, it will not take effect. That 1/3 distribution will not take effect until first the debts are paid. Because we learn that in Islam, debts is a huge, huge thing. Not like the way we today take it very lightly. We borrow, and we don't even write them down to show or to indicate to our relatives that we have debts from so and so. Now, dear brother, the danger with this is if you die with someone's debt, then you will recompensate it in the day of judgment. The day whereby you will not pay that person in terms of money or in terms of whatever thing that you were to return to. You will pay with your good deeds. And if you don't have your good deeds, then his bad deeds will be given to you, subhanallah. So it is a very shocking thing that a Muslim needs to be very careful when it comes to debts. You have to manage, you have to disclose them to your relatives, and you have to have the intention of paying. Some of us borrow without even the intention of paying, and we think it is something lightly. Just to show that debt is a big burden, even a person, a mujahid who dies in the cause of in fighting for Allah's sake, the only thing that stops a mujahid entering paradise, imagine this is a person who goes to fight for Allah's sake. He is guaranteed Jannah. But a hadith telling us the only thing that stops a mujahid entering a Jannah is if he has a debt which he hasn't paid or his relatives have not paid for him. So dear brothers and sisters, debts needs to be paid, and then the wish of the deceased, if he wanted to give whatever that remains, 1/3 of whatever he owns to other people or to a charitable organization, then this will follow. Debt takes a precedent, then the wish of the deceased will follow. Having said that, we'll take a short break and inshallah ta'ala resume with a discussion on pillars of wasiyah. Please don't go away.
إلى من يجمع المال ويلقى فيه أهوالا سنون العمر ماضية وكأس الموت قد سال